Very good morning, everybody. Good morning. I'm glad you started that off. It's our final day here in the knowledge sessions, so we are going to be running back to back until 1 o'clock. You may be wondering why I'm holding a bowl. We're going to have a lucky draw, but I'm going to give you an opportunity for everybody to please put in their business card. So we were meant to do the lucky draw right now, but I believe we have a panelist that needs to leave quite urgently to catch a flight. So what we're going to do is actually go into the panel discussion first. I'll walk around the room, you put in your business cards, and then we'll do the lucky draw after the panel. So without further ado, I'm sure you all know the hashtags, you know what to do. I'm sure you've all seen my face before. By now you know who I am. So I'm not going to get into all the frills so I can get you to the airport and everybody else to the airport. We're going to speak about hospitality for the next billion. Lifestyle and Midscale as engines of growth. The moderator is Mark Dunford, Chief Executive Officer, Africa Knight Frank, and he will come on stage, a round of applause, as he introduces his panelists.
Thanks, Tammy. Not sure I deserve a round of applause yet. Maybe just for getting out of bed on a Thursday. So yeah, my panelists can come on up. I've got Markus from Marriott, who I'm sure you all know, Sam from Hilton, who's the troublemaker that we are having to do this a little bit quickly for, and Bruno from Accor. So come on up, guys.
Thank you, Mark.
You're welcome. You knew I was going to throw you under the bus. Well, the only reason I agreed to do a Thursday morning was I thought this room would be empty, but it looks like nobody drinks at conferences anymore. Matt, you need to address that. Great. So we're here to talk about the next billion, and that obviously is referring to the population on the continent. And the World Bank have made it pretty clear that they believe that by 2050 we're going to see an additional 910 million people living in urban areas in SSA. So a huge market in sub-Saharan Africa. Massive urbanization happening at the moment. So a big market. Specifically, historically, we've seen a lot of kind of higher-end hotels built as ego projects, etc. And now we're seeing more and more of the kind of lifestyle mid-market budget hotels entering the market over the last decade or so. And that's what we're going to focus on this morning and why that's happening. As we've got the three biggest brands, I believe, on the continent sitting up here, I think I'm going to go down the line from Markus and just talk about a little bit of what your portfolio looks like right now in Africa, why it looks like that, and where it's going, what you guys are up to.
Well, good morning, everybody. I'm also shocked at how many people are here, but anyway, I've looked at that and I was stunned to see that we have equally as many hotels in the pipeline as we have open. So it's somewhere around 150 we have open and pretty much the same in the pipeline. This is a sign of what a dynamic is in this market. And what we see also is that we see different brands. I mean, we've had the fortune to team up with Protea some time ago that sort of catapulted us a little bit up in the front on size. And then what we find is we've seen a lot of interest in lodges that are branded, and that's like the support of an international brand. And we've seen a lot of, business, conference hotels, etc., that have popped up. The markets in, let's say, north of Sahara and sub-Saharan are, of course, widely different, but they're equally promising. So I think brands have a great future on this continent, and that shows also that we're all here trying to, intensify that.
Yeah. Awesome. Bruno, on to Accor.
Thanks, Mark.
Yeah.
Accor has been in Africa for the last 40 years or so. I think we started in Cairo in 1981 or so. So we're obviously big. I think we have 160 or so hotels at the moment. Great continent, and as Markus mentioned, so many different types of products that can be developed, from resorts, which is picking up a lot now, to city hotels, which will be needed in all of the big cities, big capital cities in the very near future. So much opportunity in Africa, so we're excited to be here and try to help for this.
Great. Amazing. Thank you, Mark. Well, hello, everyone. Yeah, I mean, it's the same for us. A fantastic growth story. We just released yesterday our latest update on Africa, and we're planning to triple our presence in the continent. I think by 2030 we'll be covering more than 160 hotels and 2/3 of the continent. And out of this portfolio, which is growing extremely fast, I think 35%, 40% of this portfolio sits into what we call the select service and the lifestyle segment. Select service are, sort of mid-market products where we really spend time into designing the brand, designing the product to make sure it's super efficient from a construction cost point of view and operating expenses. And lifestyle is all about, the soft brands, the experience-driven, the focus on food and drinks and top locations, obviously. I think there are, two main drivers for us that allow us to grow that fast in the continent. The first one is obviously the amazing tourism initiatives that are happening across the continent. We're seeing it in North Africa, in Morocco, Egypt. Huge push from the governments to attract more people and to boost domestic tourism, but also in new markets where we're entering very soon, markets like Angola, Ghana, Madagascar. So yeah,
and
very promising.
We have this, and we have this. You guys have all mentioned it. This kind of leisure corporate split in Africa that's quite unique in terms of the leisure being typically quite niche and small, other than north of the Sahara, as Markus mentioned, very different markets. But here in Sub-Sahara, particularly the lodge product and the tented camp product tends to be really small. Is there space for select service in that leisure space? I'll start with you and go the other way this time. Do you guys believe that there's opportunities in the select service leisure space?
Yeah, absolutely. Maybe not in the lodge market, because whenever you go in such an experience, you need to extend a lot of services to the guests. So, having a select service product in a lodge destination might not be the right product. But leisure traveler in general, yeah, absolutely. We have Hilton Garden and resorts around the world, and that work extremely well. I think they work extremely well with the domestic market. Once again, the regional travelers who will not necessarily travel outside of the region, which will spend a lot of time during their holidays and free time to explore the country they live in or explore the neighboring country they live in. And the select service brands we have in our portfolio will work extremely well with this type of demand.
That's a good point. Bruno?
Yeah, 100% agree. I think domestic tourism will be a big driver, or regional tourism will be a very big driver in the future. I think select service resorts do exist in Africa already. They're just not internationally branded. There's a lot of the smaller resorts that actually are present. They are operated, but we need to figure out ways to make a brand add values to them. And this is part of our job as well, to make sure that we help our owners get better returns through our brands. So definitely a lot of potential. And in North Africa, it's definitely also something that's present everywhere. Mid-market resorts is everywhere. Yeah.
Yeah, much bigger.
Much bigger.
It's a sign of a maturing market that you'll see a diversification. Yeah, at first, if it's a avant-gardistic market, let's call it that way, adventurous market, then you have your 5-star hotel that's a watering hole where everybody meets in the bar. The Sheratons 50 years ago in some countries. Nowadays, we'll see that this diversification, this spread is taking place, and it's a sign that the markets are maturing and that there is a mix of international traveler, because these hotels have to be fit for international travel, as well as a more discerning domestic travel. And I think both of those, that's continuing, because we've seen it in what happened in Europe, we've seen it in other countries that have matured, former Eastern Europe, the same thing happened. And I think Africa as a continent is on a threshold in order to explore this. Not every country runs at the same speed here, but I think in South Africa we can see this trend very clearly. I think we're beginning to see this in Kenya. I think we're beginning to see this in Ghana, and there's a lot of other countries where we now pick up speed. And that's a great opportunity for, new developments, but it's also a great opportunity for existing product that is in the market already. I mean, there are hotels in the market, and some hoteliers are also minded in the way that they say, we'd like to attract the international traveler. So that's why we're talking also a lot about conversions. At the moment, I think conversions is in Europe the name of the game. The opportunity is there in Africa.
I'm glad you plugged Kenya for me, because Nairobi is a great example of a market that's now sort of on the cusp of being mature.
Yeah.
Particularly from a hotel perspective. 15 years ago, we only had sort of a handful of branded luxury high-end hotels. I mean, not truly luxury, but 4 or 5 star. Now we've got this, in diverse nodes, we've got diverse products, different brands, 3-star, 2-star domestic. So, a good example of exactly that. And the domestic traveler really supported a lot of our markets in sub-Saharan. Again, we're generalizing. It's very difficult to talk about Africa as a whole, but during COVID, there was a lot of domestic and foreign expats living in markets such as Nairobi that really propped up the market by traveling within the country and going to those properties. So, very interesting.
And using lifestyle products as well.
Of course.
When we opened the Curio Collection, Kwetu, in Nairobi, the first guests were the people actually living and residing in Nairobi. And whenever you have this traction of the population living in the city and using the hotel, automatically, the international travelers or the people visiting the city will want to also be part of this. When there's a great restaurant or a rooftop bar to try in the city, because recommended by people living there, automatically, the friends coming to visit or the family coming to visit will want to stay and use the hotel, and that's what's great about lifestyle as well.
Yeah, very much so. Kwetu is a good example. We haven't seen so many of the really true budget brands come into the continent. The kind of 1 and 2 star properties, and I think. I'm going to jump to Bruno on this, being Mr. Feasibility. Is there a cost versus return element to this discussion that factors into it?
Yeah, I think there's different aspects in terms of top line, what you can generate through a budget hotel in Africa. Might be challenging compared to the cost you have if you're affiliated to a big brand. And I'm thinking of operating expenses. We talked about it, but IT, for instance, can be quite a chunky cost for a small hotel, generally speaking, but especially when you go to a geography in Africa. Some countries have currency issues, and it gets very expensive to deal with foreign providers of IT, but other items as well. So it could be a little bit tricky if the hotels are small. And then I'm also thinking international travelers, if that's what you're targeting in Africa, would not really prefer a really budget offering. They probably would go for something a little bit higher in positioning for a more safety or comfort perception more than perspective maybe. Yeah.
Markus is ish on that.
Generally, I would say yes, but when we talk about a market maturing, then we also see that it's not just about, it's a 1-star, 2-star, 3-star, that the value of the brand name actually comes with it. There comes a brand promise. So if you have a Mama Shelter here, then people have a certain expectation, the same as when they get a Moxie or when they get a Motto or whatever. And I think people, also international travelers, will see that. Now, if the product is not according to the international standards, then we may have an issue. But that's homemade then. So I think the brand will carry a lot of this spreading out into different market segments. The brand promise, because it gives the security that in a foreign market which you don't know the language and you're unsure, and you perhaps for the first time you are a little bit unsure, so you rely on the brand. I'm totally with you on that one, but I think the brand promise also would tempt people to trade perhaps lower than they would normally do.
Yeah, that's
But I think if we bounce back to this and the brand promise for very budget offering, again, very affordable, we're going to have a talent issue for big brands because it's going to be much more difficult to attract the talent. And maybe there's not enough talent everywhere in Africa to work in these hotels at the moment. So that's probably something to be tackled as well in terms of training staff, retaining them as well, and not just for the fancy, bright luxury hotels.
We have that in Europe too.
Yeah, it's probably not just
You know,
an
at
African
Moxie, you know
issue.
how they recruit people? They take them to a nightclub and they see how they interact. And if they just sit on the corner in front of a Diet Coke, that's not for Moxie. If they are on the dance floor and rock the place, that's the kind of people you want to teach how to check someone in and make a cup of coffee.
Yeah. But maybe not check you out in the morning because they won't be there.
Who cares about the morning? You know?
So these are not Moxie staff, is what we're saying. The people in the room, this is not the Moxie client staff.
They're all here.
They're all here. They're sober. They're clean. Yeah, no. And why?
I have application forms later on for all of you.
You won't get the job. You weren't on the dance floor last night. And why is there no Moxie here? Come on, that's the big question.
Yeah,
you brought it up.
I know. I was waiting for that one, and I've been thinking of a really cool line. Here it comes.
Okay.
Sometimes the most beautiful lady comes last to the ball. Okay. How's that?
These two guys might not agree with that. But yeah.
No, I think it is certainly painful to see that a country as cool as South Africa hasn't got a Moxie yet, and it has potential for 20 Moxies.
Okay, that's good.
It's certainly. I mean, we're edging there. The brand is 10 years old, and we had 300 hotels, so it's we're not doing too badly.
Yeah.
But Africa is trailing a little bit. So.
Yeah, going back to that chat earlier about, you mentioned talent, but for me, it's also an investment perspective, right? Like, even though you're building a budget, if it's a budget property, and I'm not saying Moxie is, but if you're building something that's 2-star or 1-star, you've still got to import a lot of stuff, right? There's a lot of hardware that needs to come in, and that cost, the cost of diesel, the cost of, building properly in a lot of the markets on this continent is very high. And then if you're looking for a $50 rate, you're not going to make, as an investor, you're not going to make the return, especially with the borrowing costs and the interest rates where they are. So that's also a factor, I think. So it's this kind of balance between, and the markets are shallow. A lot of people come to me and say, well, Kenya is the size of Spain, 50+ million people. There's tons of space for hotel rooms. But the reality is the disposable income of your average Spaniard and the French people that live next door and can drive across the border on summer holidays is very different to, what happens in Kenya. So
but isn't then the task of the lifestyle hotels to create the lifestyle? Because when I was in Kenya, I was riding in a bus. I thought I'd never see something like this. It had music, it has camera. It was booming. So there is a lifestyle element by nature in these people. So let that come out. Invite the neighbors, give them the first 3 drinks for free or whatever, and you'll have an authentic environment. And you want to create a lifestyle hotel? Create a lifestyle hotel where everybody wants to go, not where everybody sits in the lobby and looks at what happens elsewhere.
But there's also some, maybe I shouldn't say this, but some good example of unbranded lifestyle hotels in Africa. We also need to be realistic. Brands sometimes are not present. It doesn't mean there's nothing. But in Kenya, in Nairobi, there's some really cool hotels, not necessarily branded. We'd probably have the same in Cape Town here. So
maybe not yet. But I agree with you. There are some really cool products out there.
Yeah, I think there's an opportunity. Onimo have done a bit of work, giving them a random shout out, but that kind of homegrown, funky, affordable brand that can then get picked up by the big international operator, because maybe the international brands don't fit that cool, funky African culture. So that idea of, creating something here on the continent for the continent to then get picked up by you guys, or you guys can create something. Maybe that might be an idea.
Did I hear Protea? Did I hear Protea?
Yes. I don't know how funky Protea was, but
hey, a good start for the time. Good start for the time.
Yeah, definitely.
I wanted to say we developed, the soft brand category, which falls within our lifestyle category at Hilton. specifically for those products. A Tapestry collection, Curio collection, or LXR. We want to merge or to join forces with these great people who developed amazing concepts, but would need some distribution help ultimately for the product to be relevant, for them to get the rate, and it just works perfectly. I think this year we're going to sign around 5 or 7 Tapestry collection hotels just in East Africa. So it's working extremely well. Yeah.
And how do you guys, and I'll stay with you, Sam, how do you choose which brands to focus on the continent, or is it driven by the developers?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think, if you look at our brand scale, we have one brand for every specific sort of price point or product type. We don't have a lot of brands that compete, within the same segment or that falls within the same segment. So for us, it's quite straightforward. We spend a bit of time with the owner, with the developer. We understand, what the priorities are, where they want to position the product, where we see they should position the product, and then the brand selection is kind of automatic. There's little areas of imagination. Just because our brand scale, I find it very smart in the way that again, one brand for every sort of price point. Yeah.
So, because that's often the perception here, is that the decisions about which brands can come to Africa are made on the other side of the world by people who don't really understand the continent. Whereas, I guess you guys are quite present in the markets. Do you sometimes get a bit frustrated with that, or do you feel that you guys are doing a pretty good job? I mean, Patrick, who likes to dodge these conferences, somebody send him that soundbite, please. He fortunately, he knows the continent well, obviously.
Yes.
So he's a little bit different. But do you find that there's leeway from you guys as the developers on the ground to say, there's this great property, can we brand it as whatever?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. That's
Similarly?
That's what we do.
Yeah.
I mean,
I think there's a lot of flexibility from the big groups as well, in terms of if a developer has a good opportunity that matches a brand, why not? There's no reason to say no.
Yeah.
We would probably go even a step further. What we found with Autograph and with Tribute is that some people decided to use that chassis of our systems as a growth vehicle. So for their brand, for their own brand. So we have a company in Germany, they had 2 hotels with us. Now they've got 6. Their brand equity, their design direction, their operation, everything, but they run on the Autograph chassis. And so we thought there may be a story behind this. And that's how we came up with our latest brand, launched in India, Series by Marriott, which is exactly aiming at that. So take a local brand in Africa who has the aspiration to attract international customers and the aspiration to grow. And, to be fair, at some stage, every company reaches a point where they say, what am I going to do next? Am I going to create my own loyalty program? Am I going to, create my own reservation program? Am I going to have a sales office in Hong Kong? What am I going to do now? Or am I going to go to someone who's done all of that, and I use that chassis, but I keep my own brand, I keep my own brand equity. I can even use their development team to expand my brand on their chassis, and that's Series by Marriott. And that, I think, is going to be a great opportunity for companies, hotel companies on this continent that have established themselves, that have established their own following, their own standing, and that are now ready for the next step.
Emerging markets generally, actually. And then eventually maybe you get absorbed into your sizable portfolio of brands.
I mean, if you create a logo and you put a red M on it, then the chances are we might at some stage knock on the door and want to buy it, like Citizen M or so. That does happen,
That's a good point, Well, I've been told that we only have 5 minutes left and that there is to be Q&A, which was news to me. So apparently there's going to be Q&A. So any Q&A? How's it going to work?
Let's start with the Q, no?
Yeah.
We'll do Q.
We'll see if we do the A, but we'll get the Qs first.
So how we've been running it is we have a roving microphone. We only have a chance for one question. So just raise your hand and just let us know who you're directing it to. Please don't be like yesterday when we were running ahead of time and then there were no questions. Like the 0.001% time we were running ahead of time. Please just ask something. Something. They're really cool. They'll answer it.
Are we? Depends who asks.
Anybody with a question?
This is too early for questions.
There we go.
Front row.
Thanks for saving the day.
Question is, when you look at the market that you have in across all of Africa, when you look at select service or mid-scale, where do you see the most growth at this moment for your soft collection brands? Because you've both, I say, Hilton and Marriott kind of spent a bit of time in developing those. But where do you see the most growth, and where do you see that in the next 2 to 3 years? I use this as a comparison for, say, Middle East.
Geographically?
Yes.
For the select service brands?
Yes, specifically.
Like Hilton Garden Inns or, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think this type of product is so, I call them bulletproof. You know, they're so durable, they're so well built and designed that there's little risks or much less risks associated with those products. So I think if you look at the continent, they can work pretty much everywhere. We target airport hotels. I think that's one of our key focus. We will have, our goal is to have a Hilton Garden Inn type of product with associated with every airport on the continent, like we've done, everywhere else in the world. I think key cities and then secondary cities, obviously, where the regional travelers or where the domestic travelers are traveling. So it's quite big. It's quite vast. The opportunities are quite big. Yeah.
And I think that goes for all the brands. And the bulletproof nature, I'll let them answer, is exactly as Sam said. It's that ability to attract the regional and domestic, often corporate traveler. So, when we see it all the time, and I'm fortunate to look at a lot of countries on the continent, as soon as there's any kind of political unrest or an Ebola outbreak or whatever it is, the foreign travelers are the first to disappear. The high-end foreign travelers, the luxury, they just disappear. Whereas your corporate regional traveler who's working for a regional insurance company or bank or whatever, they, rain or shine, they have to travel. So they keep that segment propped up.
Well, the other thing is, of course, also if there is a crisis, people stay longer. And who comes in? People with cameras, people who write stories, correspondence, etc. And we've seen crisis situations where our extended stay properties, their residence in Marriott or so, are full and have huge occupancies when all the others are emptying out. Because people are suddenly staying and forced to stay, as you say. Those are the guys, they have to stay, they have to go to those places, and they still want to have an environment where they know they have a Wi-Fi that works, where they have, a lot of the security that people look in an area which is insecure.
Yeah, so I think you're 100% right, and I think that tees us up nicely for March next year in Nairobi for us doing the extended stay session. But I think that's our time, guys. We've got to go.
It is, yes. Yeah. Thank you so much. A round of applause for them,
Thank
please.
you. Thank you.